Konnichiwa, Pakusei-tachi. I'm Puppy-Sensei, the puppy girl Japanese teacher VTuber of Irium US. I make Japanese language content to help you level up your abilities. Today's going to be a pretty easy one. When we think about Japanese grammar, sometimes we're thinking about adding some new conjugation, verb form, or grammatical quirk that allows us to modify parts of our sentence to say more or say less. But sometimes, a new grammar point really is just all about adding a new set phrase into our arsenal that we can use to modify our sentences. And those tend to be quite simple to use. That is definitely the case, in this dog's humble opinion, with today's grammar point, Douyatte. As we're seeing on our grammar card here, Douyatte is a phrase that can mean something like, how do you do something? In what way would you accomplish something? Or by what means are you able to do something? It virtually requires that the sentence be a question, except for a very specific case where you're stating that you don't know how to do the thing in question. We'll look at examples of each of these today. Douyatte can either appear at the beginning of your sentence to make the whole sentence into a how would you do this kind of sentence, or it can be placed before the verb phrase to imply specifically how one is able to manage to do that particular action. Either case is pretty similar in translation actually, although there will be some edge cases where having Douyatte in the middle of a sentence will give a slightly different nuance. If we break down what we're actually seeing in Douyatte, we really have three elements. First is do. Alone, do is a question word that means how. The most emblematic use for do would be in a sentence like, "どうですか?" How is it? Your teacher might ask you a question like this one. 昨日の宿題はどうですか? How was last night's homework? Difficult? Easy? Frustrating? We're going to see do in a ton of sentences that express similar questions, all having to do with how something is, feels, or might otherwise be. The second part of douyatte is the ya part. This ya comes from the verb yaru. Yaru means to do. And that might make you scratch your head a little bit, because don't we already know the verb for to do? Isn't it suru? Haven't we been using suru for a long time to talk about doing things in Japanese? All true. Both suru and yaru mean to do. So what's the difference between the two? Well, yaru is a bit more informal and can be seen as just a touch rude in some cases. But also, suru is the verb that you are going to need if you want to take a noun and convert it into a verb. Yaru is much less versatile and usually appears in sentences where the thing that you're doing is a bit more abstract. Actually, you've probably already used the verb yaru, perhaps without even knowing it. The phrase yatta, meaning I did it, is the past tense casual form of yaru. So yatta, literally, I did it. Let's think back to the example that we had a moment ago where your teacher asked you how your homework was. So she says, 昨日の宿題はどうですか? Maybe you are forced to answer, 実はやりませんでした. Actually, I didn't do it. I didn't do my homework. Oh no! Tisk tisk. This is a pretty okay use of the verb yaru, although you could probably make the claim that even in polite form, yarimasen deshita might honestly be still a little too casual to say to your teacher. The third and final aspect of douyatte is the te verb form. Here, yaru is in the te form to form the renyokai or linking form. Essentially, the te form here is allowing you to connect douyatte with sentences or verbs. These aspects together basically show us that douyatte is performing a role in the sentence in which it expresses how would you swim, jump, play, eat, whatever verb, right? And then we're putting this together, right? It's not so difficult. So どうやって何々々の verb, whatever verb you want to use. Okay? Now let's look at a few quick example sentences. どうやって一日中寝ますか? How is it that you're able to sleep all day long? 一日中 implies doing something the entire day. Like 一日中働きました. I worked all day long. 今疲れます. Now I'm tired. 寝る is the verb meaning to sleep. That's what we see in this sentence, right? We see 寝ますか, right? And that's asking how sleep. Notice that this sentence pretty much has to end in ka because it's necessarily a question thanks to Douyatte being there at the beginning. I have seen some people mistakenly claim that the end particle ne also turns your sentence into a question, but Douyatte provides excellent proof that that's really not the case. Here are two very valid Japanese sentences. 一日中寝ますか? Meaning, do you sleep all day long? And 一日中寝ますね? Meaning, you sleep all day long, don't you? But when we add Douyatte as a question word, we get these two sentences. どうやって一日中寝ますか? And どうやって一日中寝ますね? The second sentence really doesn't mean anything because it's not a question. So ne just ultimately does not like to play nicely with Douyatte, right? So we're going to end up resulting with a sentence that ends in ne that doesn't really make any sense because it's not a question. As I said before, Douyatte can also appear in the middle of a sentence, before the verb, and this really has very little effect on the sentence as a whole. I will say though that this sentence, 一日中どうやって寝ますか? sounds a little irregular to my ear. I don't think that it's not grammatical, but I find that to me it sounds a little strange to have 一日中 before どうやって in this sentence. And I'll be honest, I can't explain why. I don't know why that doesn't sound good to me. 一日中どうやって寝ますか? 一日中どうやって寝ますか? It seems like it should be fine. I don't know. It just, to me, sounds just a little bit weird. By all means, if you know why that sounds weird to me, please tell me, teach me, because I cannot think of a reason why this wouldn't be a good sentence, feels perfectly grammatical, and yet at the same time, I don't know, it sounds strange. There are other cases, though, where Douyatte almost feels like it really belongs in the middle of a sentence. As in this sentence. それは, as for that thing, どうやって食べるの? How do you eat it? それはどうやって食べるの? How do you eat that thing? Note here that you're not likely to be asking somebody how they have the stomach to eat the thing in question. It's not really, that's revolting, how can you eat that? It's more about the method. How do you eat it? Maybe you're looking at like a spiky sea urchin that was just plucked from the ocean, and you look at it and you're wondering, how would somebody go about being able to get to the meat inside to make that into sushi? Douyatte is about how you do something, not really your reasons for doing it, and therefore you should use it in sentences where you need the method to be explained to you. I also said that there are specific cases where you're going to use Douyatte in sentences that are not really questions. And that's usually when you don't know how to do a thing. So here's an example. 彼がどうやって全部の漢字を覚えたのか知らないですね。I don't know how he managed to memorize every kanji. 彼がどうやって全部の漢字を覚えたのか知らない。This is a long sentence, so I want to break it down together. Alright, so we start with 彼が, we're talking about him. He did something. And then we have どうやって, how, in what way. 全部の漢字を, all the kanji. Every kanji. Every single kanji. 覚えた, past tense of oboeru, meaning to remember or to memorize. No here is a nominalizer, so it's taking the verb oboeta in the past tense and making it a noun, the act of having memorized. And then ka is our question marking particle, which is actually here to pair up with douyatte, but we'll talk about that in a moment. And then finally we have shiranai, I don't know. Shiranai, I do not know. Okay? But what we are seeing here is that even in this not really a question sentence that happens to use douyatte, it actually is still a question sentence. What you're really saying here is I don't know sentence. Whatever that sentence is, you're saying sono bun shiranai. I don't know that sentence. And that sentence is itself a question. The core of this sentence really is どうやって全部の漢字を覚えたのか? How do you memorize every kanji? You're seeking the method to be able to memorize all the kanji. But what we're stating in the I don't know question is that we don't have the answer to that question, right? The statement is I don't know, and what it is that we don't know is the answer to the question, how do you go about memorizing every kanji? So yeah, basically, that's it for how you use douyatte. It's a pretty cool feature of the Japanese language, and it's also relatively basic as well. I think the important thing to remember is that when you use douyatte, as when you use many question words in Japanese, it needs to be a question. It's a question word, so it's going to pair up with ka or no to kind of make yourself have a perfect question. Yeah. Ready to find out what we're going to be learning next week? どうやってそのウィールをやりますか? Ah! Yatta! Okay, so, next time we are going to be learning あらかじめ, which can help you form sentences in which you did something beforehand or ahead of time. Awesome, I'm looking forward to it. I guess I will have to write the script before I film it next time. Beforehand. Get it? It's like a pun because we're going to be learning arakajime beforehand for the next lesson. Anyway, I'll see you next week. Mata raishu!
Thanks for watching. I'm glad you watched until the end. You can find my other content here. Also, it would make me really happy if you would check out jinxedgaming.com. If you're into zero-calorie gaming fuel and Oshi cups, you will love their products. Puppy-Sensei recommends the tangy strawberry flavor. It's so yummy. Remember to use code SENSEI at checkout for 10% off your order. Can't wait to see you next time. Mata ne!